I'm personally thrilled to introduce our last presenter before we open this to question and answers. I'm personally thrilled because Carl Stahmer and I have known each other a long time. But we haven't seen each other in many years, 4 years now. We went to graduate school together, a PhD program, right here at UCSD in the literature department. And just when Mr. Sadari was saying, reminding us of the original meaning of the philosopher, it made me think about those graduate school seminars. And I wish back then we had known that, because that's all we did, was argue as philosophers. So it's good to see my old friend. Carl Stahmer was ordained Chan Dak True Attainment of Wisdom by the Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh in August 2000. His writings include publications in the Mindfulness Bell magazine, contributions to the book I Have Arrived, I Am Home by the Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh, and he is currently completing a book of practice for teenagers. He practices daily with his family in Encinitas, California, and with the Deer Park Science Hub in Escondido, where he is a frequent leader of meditation and Dharma discussion talk groups. He has also traveled with Thich Nhat Hanh as a meditation and practice leader on a variety of retreats around the country. He holds research scientist positions at the University of Maryland and the University of California, Santa Barbara, and is Director of Research and Development for Shuttle Media Incorporated, where in all three instances he conducts research in the area of human-computer interaction and the construction of meaning. He believes that it's just as easy to be free in the real world as it is in the monastery. Welcome.
I also want to just begin by thanking MMW for hosting this program. I wish it had been here when I was a student here. I really do. As Evan said, we spent most of our time spinning in our heads all the time, thinking we were solving problems. It's taken me many years to learn to stop doing that and get some real answers. And also thank you to the other presenters. It's very nice to hear everybody's presentation. And I want to focus my presentation on sort of two fronts. One, the general question of what, as a Buddhist practitioner, I think it means to lead a contemplative life. And then also cover sort of on a daily basis, what does that look like for me as a Buddhist practitioner. And in answer to that sort of first question in general terms, what it means to me to lead or to try to lead a contemplative life is to try diligently, with all of my effort, to direct my mind in all of my waking moments, no matter what I'm doing, towards attention to what as Buddhists we call the ultimate reality, the spiritual truth of what's really happening, behind what we think is happening. Often in the world, sort of give an example, if I'm having a discussion with somebody, and it leads to a philosophical argument, in a classroom, it's usually we're not arguing about the thing we think we're arguing about. Something else is happening there. Some energy is moving, that both parties or all parties are bringing to the table. And then even lower than that, there's some real spiritual reality, some truth of existence that really is the truth of what's happening. And all those other things are just layers, what we would call a historical dimension that lays on top of an ultimate dimension. And so for me, my job, and I use that word on purpose, I try to remind myself that my job is to be in touch with that deeper layer. I forgot to say, I didn't focus on track my time. I don't want to run too long. Is to try to really touch that truth of what's really happening in the moment, and not get caught up in the wrap in my head. And I believe, in a sort of tenet of I think most schools of Buddhism, is the reality that there is no more and no less spiritual reality in any situation over another. Whether I'm in a classroom, whether I'm sitting in a tree meditating out in nature, whether I'm involved in a conflict with somebody, be it of a philosophical bent in a classroom or on a battlefield in Iraq, that the full truth of spiritual reality is present in every single moment and every single place. So we don't have to go somewhere or be in a particular environment to experience that reality. Some realities are easier to experience that truth because there's less distraction, but the truth is there nonetheless. And that is the sort of core of my practice and of a Buddhist contemplative practice, a word that you hear a lot now and you didn't used to hear so much in discourse, mindfulness, is that awareness of that present moment. And what that means is being able to clear oneself of the chatter to get down to the root of what's really happening. And so the question is, how does one do that? I mean, how do I, as a Buddhist practitioner, do that? How do we, as a Buddhist Sangha, do that? And I want to sort of address that on three fronts. I mean, there's sort of three pillars of that. One is through structured meditation. And as a Zen Buddhist in particular, that's a core component of my practice, is the idea that one has to do regular structured sitting. I'm actually not going to talk a lot about that tonight because there's just lines of books and teachers out there where you can get that. There's a lot of information on the practice of sitting. The other idea is the idea of community, or Sangha, as we call it. That idea that when you're in a group of people who are all trying to accomplish the same thing you accomplish, be focused on the same thing that you're focused on, it becomes easier. And it's just sort of like enlightenment by osmosis, and it really does work. It's just, there's a communal energy that happens when you're there. And there's, thankful for us today, there is no shortage of those kinds of communities around. I mean, I think often don't realize how lucky we are. It's so easy to look at our world today and think, boy, it's just, it's chaos, and to see all the bad things. But I really believe, like, if you had been alive on the planet 2,000 years ago, you would have been lucky if once in your life somebody who really achieved a state of spiritual attainment, came in contact with you. If you had a chance to sit in the presence of somebody who was truly grounded and connected. And today they're everywhere, man. I mean, like, pick up the reader. There's somebody giving a talk every night of the week. I mean, multiple people. We are surrounded by spiritual awakening in a way that this planet has never experienced before. And so finding Sangha is actually quite easy to find those kind of communities and connect with them. It really isn't a challenge. Timing can be a challenge, and I'll get to that. The presence is there, and it avails itself to you if you're willing to grab hold of it. And the final sort of tool that I'm going to talk about, and where I want to spend most of my time, is a concept that we call mindfulness bell. And it comes directly from a bell at a monastery. And the idea being that when we ring a bell, and we say we invite the bell to ring as a partner in that relationship, it's a reminder to the hearer that what is my job? My job is to connect. That's my focus of my contemplation. And so our practice is, whenever we hear a bell, to take 3 breaths, to stop. So if you were at a Buddhist monastery and you hear a bell, you'll see like everybody kind of freeze at a lot of monasteries, and they'll stop and go, well, what are they doing? And it's really kind of freaky the first time you see it. Everyone just stops and breathes, and then they go on with what they're doing. And it serves as a reminder, as a conscious reminder to come back to ourselves. And because I'm a slow learner, and because I have a lot of karma and all that good stuff, I need more than just 1 or 2 reminders a day. I have a regular sitting meditation practice every morning that happens with my family. But, the truth be told, that will leave me within a few hours. By the time I get up from the mat and I go to my life and I go to my office, and then, usually it's a phone call right away, and then I start on my work, it doesn't take long before I get caught in my own mental trap. What am I doing right now? What am I thinking? What do I have to do? And I lose that connection that I think it's my job to try to maintain. And so what I need are reminders, continuous reminders all day long. And I really believe this is the main advantage, the main thing that a practice center or monastery has to offer that sort of promotes a spiritual life. And if people here have ever been to a retreat or you go to a monastery as a lay practitioner, you're sort of in this great space, and you know, it's all practice and it feels wonderful, and there's this real honeymoon period because you're on vacation, right? I mean, you actually left your life behind and you went there. But when you live in a monastery, that doesn't take long before that becomes real life. Like, you have responsibilities and work that you do, and you have to get that work done the same as you do in the quote-unquote real world. And one thing I learned very quickly was that I could stress just as much. I could be just as rushed, just as busy over the fact that I had to, be at morning meditation, lead a working meditation in the afternoon, then, it was my turn to cook that day, and then I was going to, lead a meditation or a walking group in the afternoon, that I could wrap that up into all kinds of pressures, just the same as when I was at school or working. And the lesson there was that, the problem is my head. It's not the environment. But what that environment does offer is when you get carried away, there's constant reminders. You look up and your brother is dressed all in brown and his head is shifted, and you go, I'm home. I'm supposed to come back, right? You hear a bell. You walk past altars all the time. And those things serve as continuous mindfulness bells so that every 15 minutes or so, you're reminded, this is where I am, this is what I'm doing. And I need that still in my daily life, or I will stray from my path. So I'm going to list a few things that I do in my daily life. Some of which we practice at the monastery, some are things that I've morphed since I don't live in a monastery, and I live with my family in a home in Encinitas. One of those, a practice that we do use at the monastery that I use at home, is to turn things that happen on a regular basis and a regular interval that I have no control over into mindfulness bells. And the best one of those is the telephone or your iPad. Right? It comes whether you want it to or not, and it comes at random. So you don't schedule it, you don't control it. And if you call any Unified Buddhist Church monastery anywhere in the world, no one will ever answer a phone in less than 3 minutes. Ever. Because any time a phone rings, everybody stops and breathes. 3 breaths for 3 rings. And then we pick up the phone. And it's a bell. It's a reminder. That nudge is a reminder to ask yourself, where am I right now? Am I really here where I'm supposed to be? Or am I off thinking about what I'm going to do 3 hours from now, or stressing about 3 weeks from now, or thinking about, what happened with me and my dad when I was 6, or, all of those things, those tapes that we play in our head. And so I do that at home, and I use the phone. Another thing that you can do is pick noises that really annoy you. Now this sounds really stupid, but it's really very true. So like, a trash truck shows up every Thursday and wakes you up at, 5:30 in the morning, and you just don't like that. And for the last 3 years, you've been rolling over angry every time that happens. What you do is you tell yourself, that trash truck is a bell, and the next time I hear that truck, it's going to remind me to breathe. And just that simple intention will make a difference. You will remember. And every time you hear that truck from there on out, you'll get angry still first, probably in the beginning. And then you'll think, oh, I'm supposed to breathe. I'm supposed to come back. And you'll do it. And it serves as a reminder. Another practice that is sort of ingrained in us, the monastery practice, is the idea of walking meditation. Of using your walking as a time to be present. And I don't have time to learn the whole practice of really walking and being conscious of every step and how it feels. But if you can orient your mind just simply, even without any instruction on that, on the idea that walking is a reminder. That every time you walk, you want to be reminded to ask yourself, where am I? Am I here? Am I now? You'll start to do that, and you'll figure out you walk a lot in a day. Like, you'll be sitting at your desk, and then you have to go to the bathroom, or you have to go get a drink, or whatever. And pretty soon, every time you get up and take that first step, you'll think, where am I? Am I here? And you take those few breaths consciously, and that brings you back. So those are the sort of incidental practices that really go a long way and make a huge difference. The next step is then to schedule those things in yourself. So, for example, one thing I do, I don't do so much now, but I really did, I mean, religiously, if I dare I use the word, for the first several years that I started adapting this practice, is I have a timer, and I still do have a timer, and I just use a longer interval now, and I would set it. Initially, I went for a half an hour, I actually cranked it back to 15-minute intervals. That's how long I could last. But you find that golden interval, how long can I maintain my mindfulness? And I would set a timer every time I sit down to work. And every time that timer would go off, I would stand up, take 3 breaths, get grounded, and then sit back down and start to work again. And I also, and I should say too, I was like a binge worker, being a graduate student and then also working in this technology programming field where you're sort of, it's mesmerizing and there's a culture of just working for days on end without stopping and valorizing and proud of it. And I had to undo that. So I also set a rule for myself that I never worked more than an hour at a single time without taking a 10-minute walking. I would get up, go for a walk, come sit back down. Those practices, I don't want to downplay them, were extremely difficult. I mean, when that buzzer would go off, and I would be like just 15 minutes or then a half an hour in my work, and now I got to stop and right in the middle of solving a problem, and everything in your conscious mind says, if I stop, I'm going to lose my train of thought, this isn't going to work, it's very difficult, but simple. But adopting those few things is huge, because when you do that over the course of a whole day, that, the incidentals, the phone ringing, really means that realistically about every 15 minutes, all day long, I'm being reminded. Where is your focus? Is your focus on, this imaginary raft, what's important, or is your focus really on the root of what's truly happening? And I need that still, and I need it then. And otherwise, I slide. And what I want to close with is that sense of annoyance that I experienced. I really thought that taking these breaks was going to kill my thinking because it was going to disrupt my thinking. Are there any literature people here? Harrison Burton on, right? You put a buzzer in the guy's head to talk every 15 minutes so that he'll be as stupid as everybody else's. Emerson's Vonnegut story, right? And that's what I thought was going to happen. I would be disrupting my flow. I wouldn't be able to think anymore. I also thought people that I work with would not put up with this. The tech industry is like, frantic because inventions there are out of date, in 6 months. And so they want it now, And the truth of the matter is it had exactly the opposite effect. I actually think better. My thinking is much more clear. I'm able to, honestly, able to conceive things and work in a way I could never work before. And all those super frenetic people that I thought were going to fire me actually love me. Like my interaction with those people is better. Because the truth is everybody wants to be calm and grounded. They just don't know how. And when you bring that energy into a room, people respond positively to it, not negatively to it. They actually just accept it, and they're happy that it's there. And it's not so, we think we can't schedule those things, but we really can. That's the paradox of spiritual practice. You would think that by taking your focus off of the details of that historical dimension and just focusing on that ultimate, that you would lose something here. But the reality is that the universe isn't ordered that way. When we put our focus on the bottom, on the root, the top takes care of itself in ways that are much more creative and much better than we ever could have forced them into. And at the same time, we're really connecting to what's real, and that's where we get some real freedom. So with that, I'm going to end.